is about a ripe avocado. The texture and the color is what you're really, really looking for. Those of you who have seen that so far, you see where it's soft, but it's not mushy soft. You're looking for something that is firm yet soft. You want to be able to squeeze it a little bit and have it kind of bounce back in shape. You'll find avocados downstairs and you'll walk up to them and you'll pick them up and squeeze them, and it's harder than concrete. I promise you it's not ready. You'll find other ones where you'll go to grab them and your hand will go right through them. Leave them there because they're blacker than night inside and they taste terrible. You want something that has a tiny itty bitty little bit of green in the skin. Okay? If you look at that one closely, there's just very, very little bit of green that you can still see underneath the black. If it's got a lot of green to it, it will be very hard. Now, that doesn't mean you can't buy it. It just means you have to work with it a little bit. If you find avocados and all they have are bright green ones, they're really, really hard ones, buy them, put them in a brown paper bag for 2 to 3 days, and they will soften and be perfect. Okay? So if you're not going to use them right this second and you still want to get them, you can and they will work. Okay? With ours, we're going to pop the tops out. Now, for those of you who have never worked with avocado, they have a giant golf ball sized pit right smack dab in the center. So the best way to do it is to run your knife completely through them and then twist. Okay? Take your knife again, and you should be able to, if you hit right in the center, twist it and get that seed to pop out. Okay? Then try and get your knife back. Okay? Any of the stuff that's left on there, you can scrape down. Okay? Take all that extra stuff and we're going to scrape that right into our bowl. Now, there's 100 ways to cut these. My favorite way to do it is right in the shell. Make sure there's nothing in there. Take your knife and run it right along the skin line in both directions, just like you were to dice it. Okay? And then the easiest way to do this is to take your thumb and put it right in the skin and run it right around it. And that does two things. One, it pops all the big chunks out. And two, it lets you scrape all that last little bit out of there. We're not going to mash this, so that little bit that you can scrape out kind of helps. And I'll leave that there so you can see there is really nothing left in that at all. Again, it doesn't take but a few seconds to cut them all out, to dice it all up, and then just run your thumb around it and get all that out. Okay? Now I am going to switch these real quick, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the rest in half and dice them before I go to take them out of there. But while I do that, we're going to switch in the ovens. Okay, now I didn't do 2 trays, but everybody saw me do the first tray. Start to finish and out of the oven, and it didn't take us very long. Now these we're going to throw in, and I'm going to cut this temperature down just a tiny bit to 350. I don't want that timer on there. Wow. I'm only going to put this one on for about 5 minutes. Just because, again, we're really just trying to melt that cheese. Now, back to our avocados. Everybody got to feel that, right? Okay. Those of you that eat avocados, that's a pretty good one. Okay. Those of you who don't, have to trust us. That's what you're looking for when you're picking them if you're going to use them right away. If you're not going to use them right away, by all means, anything will do. Because you didn't let me pick it. Okay, when you're cutting them, I start with the tip of the knife and go right to the core and then just roll it back down the knife. When you get to the end, slide it forward and go back down again, okay? That one's going to be hard. Now, if you notice, I have 7 up here and the recipe calls for 6. Anybody want to guess why? Just in case I have a bad one. There's nothing worse than needing 6 avocados and buying 6 avocados and getting home and realizing you got a rotten one. They're really not that expensive. I just grabbed the extra one. I'll do 6. If I don't need the last one, put it in the fridge. It lasts for tomorrow. We can chop it up and throw it on top of our nachos, and we have it. But if we have to go back to the store for one, kind of bothersome. See? I knew when I cut that one it was a little soft. So we're just going to take that one, put it aside, and go to this last one we got. Now, you can see the color in the center of these is all pretty uniform. On the outside, it's got a real dark green, and then it goes to lighter green, and then it goes to yellow. That is actually the most ideal thing you can find. That's the best color and what you're actually looking for. Again, we're just going to pop them with the knife, and we're going to pull the centers out. That one's got a really soft center, actually, which is good because then you can actually see the seed and see how big it is. They are tricky to get off. Sometimes it takes a little more work. I think the hardest part about getting them out is getting them off your knife after you've managed to smash it down in there. Okay. Now we have our 10 avocado halves. And because we're working smarter and not harder, we're going to cut them all. And then we're going to scoop them all out. So we're not worrying about getting our hands done or anything else. The other way that it's similar to this, it's actually almost the exact same thing, would be to do the same cutting method and then to use a spoon to scrape them out. You tend to get some of the skin that breaks off in that a little more. I find it much easier just to use your thumb. Everybody knows I like to play with my food as it is. Why give up a chance? You know what I mean? They grow avocados in most warm climates. There are some grown in Florida. Most of them come from California, New Mexico, Texas, Mexico, and in all the southern United States, or not southern United States, I'm sorry, South America. They can grow north. They just have very limited seasons, and most of them are hot-housed to keep them from going bad in the winter. Once they get into cold weather, they turn brown real fast and they harden. And if you get a chance after class today or the next time you're here shopping, go down to that avocado section that we have in produce and feel a few, and you'll see the same avocados came from the same trees, from the same farm, and you'll see night and day in their different ripeness. You'll find one that's overly soft and mush, and you'll find the next one that's as green as this lime and as solid as a rock. Okay? We have them all cut and ready. We're just going to scrape the last little bits out of here. They will ripen on your counter. They take a little bit longer than if you put them in a brown bag. So if you just want to leave them sit on the counter, by all means, 3 to 4, maybe 5 days, depending on how green they are. If you need them quicker than that, for some reason, a brown paper bag will turn them faster than anything. How did I miss one? Ah, well. Again, we'll just scraping them all out with our thumb. It lets you get all of the, I guess it's a fruit, out without actually ruining it, without breaking it, cutting it, cracking it. And when you cut through these, you have spots that tear. If you try and use a spoon for it, it tends to make it a little more difficult. It tends to break on you a little bit more. Almost. Get this last little bit out. Again, when you're scraping this out, you kind of want to be gentle because you want it to stay relatively diced, but at the same time, some of it being smashed is good because that's going to kind of give you that guacamole paste that everybody's used to. But not all brands of guacamole are mushed and mashed and smashed. Sometimes it's nice to have them in slightly larger chunks. And the reason I paired this with our nachos is because it's a natural to go on top of them. And I encourage someone in the room to try it. I'm sure there's a few people here who will. I know you're not going to, Peggy. It's okay. I've gotten used to it. Better chance of it being 95 degrees in the morning, isn't it? I have gotten Peggy to eat a few things, but I'm pretty sure this ain't one of them.
Nothing that creeps.
Nothing that what?
That creeps and crawls.
Oh, come on. Does that mean you're going to try the nachos because they got chicken and they're okay?
Maybe they don't have an
Peggy doesn't like my nachos because there's stuff on them. Oh, well. All right. 6 avocados. Doesn't take very long. Please don't be afraid of them. You'll get to try them this evening, and you'll learn that they're not a horrible, terrible, miserable thing. They actually have a pretty good flavor. They're not very difficult to work with. Okay? It is. It's also in California, New Mexico, even in Texas. It's on their menus. It's in every dish. Up here, you have southern fried steak on just about everything and biscuits and gravy every morning. They have guacamole and avocados on almost as many things. It is an incredibly healthy food. It's actually considered one of the world's top umpteen whatever foods. It ranks up there with like blueberries and broccoli and things like that. It has an incredible amount of nutrients, and vitamins, and minerals in it.
Do they eat them? Are they edible just like they are?
Sure, you can just take one and peel the skin off and chew it right down to the core. It won't hurt you one bit. It's a very creamy fruit or creamy fruit, I believe. And it's got a very silky texture to it. If you take just a plain chunk like that and you would put it in your mouth, you could almost just press it to the roof of your mouth with your tongue and it would actually just kind of melt away. For this, again, we're going back to our tomato. We're going to do it the exact same way. We'll cut the stem out. Do it on both sides. And we're just going to slice it down. We're going to keep it about the same size as the other one. And we're going to cut the top first. Now, I use that side to cut through it on the top, and this one, because I want to show you, we're going to flip over. Any knife, I don't care if it's dull, if it's the back side, if it's upside down, if you flip your tomato over and it's softer, you'll be more likely to cut through it and less likely to slip and cut yourself and to bruise the stuff up. However, if you have good knives, by all means, cut it through the top. Now, when I cut that tomato, if you noticed, I looked at it first, and I tried to find the widest portion of the tomato, and that's where I made my first cut through it in half. And that just makes it a little bit easier when you're slicing it and dicing it. If you were to cut it across the thickest part, you'd have to slice more times, and then it stacks a little higher, makes it a little more difficult. So when you're doing it, try and find the widest portion of it and cut across that first. And that saves you a few slices down the road. Back to our onion. Again, cut the top off, and you just want to cut the bottom as close to that stem as you can. We'll get rid of that. We're going to cut it in half again. And the reason I cut it in half is so that the skin peels a whole lot easier. Who's tried to peel a whole onion? The first thing you have to do is cut a little spot in it, right? Yeah. If you're going to cut a little spot in it, if you're not going to use it as a whole onion for rings, just cut it in half. It makes it so much easier to peel. And then you can actually see along the end. Now, I don't know if everybody can see this, but see the difference in size between this outside one and then the next two in? If that outside layer was any thinner, it would have to come off because it would be too dry. Like this one, you can't even see the outside layer, it's so thin. So we're just going to take them both off. Now you can see there's 2 layers there, so it was real papery dry. Okay, we'll go back to chopping. Again, when I do these, if you watch, I'll start on an angle and follow the onion. And you'll turn the knife up as you go. And you'll go back to going at the side angle again. And what that does is as I cut it so that every strip gets the same size. And then when you cut across, it makes sure that all your dices are even. this other half done. Okay. Now, back to my favorite ingredient. What's my favorite ingredient? Yep.
Oh, jalapeno.
Jalapenos. And I've been thinking about it the whole time, and I think I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to take the seeds out. I know that nobody likes the seeds, just me. Now, peppers have a very unique flavor, and they have very unique heat levels. And in almost all peppers, except for the 3 new peppers that are considered to be the 3 hottest in the world, have one thing in common. Hot peppers all have a vein that runs right through the seeds. And the chemical that makes them hot is called capsaicin, and that chemical is only found closest to the seed pods in all but 3 of the hottest peppers in the world. Okay? The new 3 that are out, it's contained through the entire internal portion of the seed pod. So there's really no way of scraping the heat out of those. If you're getting hot peppers that are that hot, it's because, well, you want peppers that hot. With the jalapenos, the poblanos, and serranos, and chilies, you can scrape most of the seeds out and you can kind of control and moderate the heat levels. Now with these, the way I like to cut them is I break the back at the bottom so it'll lay flat, and then I cut them very similar to my onions. I go right to the top and cut it down into little strips. Again, you can let the fruit or the vegetable or whatever it is work with you instead of against you. If you cut it completely into little strips, you spend more time chasing little strips around your cutting board and putting your fingers in harm's way. Right now, the pepper is actually going to do all the work and hold itself together for me. And then we can just cross cut it. And then when we get to that last part that we didn't cut all the way through, just turn it sideways and go back across it.
And you have to be very careful when you're dealing with jalapenos because, like, say you have a little cut or something in your finger, that burns.
It all depends on your pain tolerance, but yes. Anytime you're handling anything that has capsaicin in it, it will hurt tremendously if you have an open cut and you don't realize it. You will know you have a cut if you didn't before, okay? Very similar to the acid in lemon juice or in citrus fruits, pineapples even. If you get it in an open cut, it's going to burn tremendously. The difference with capsaicin is it's actually heat. So lemon juice, the acid is what burns. With capsaicin, it'll spread because it's an oil. The new peppers that are out there, if you handle them without gloves on, it will burn your skin, period. So anything, jalapenos, serranos, things like that are okay. Once you get above that and you get into the habaneros and the scotch bonnets and the ghost chilies and the Trinidad bird peppers, it's very important to wear gloves regardless of cuts or fingers or anything like that, just because they're so intense.
If it burns that much outside, what's it gonna do inside?
It doesn't do a single thing to me except make me sweat. I promise you, and this is a perfect example, my mom is here with you and she'll tell you, I have eaten some of the hottest things you can find in the world. I break out in a sweat and 20 minutes later I'm fine. And I've tried stuff from jalapenos, which are very, very, very low in heat intensity, to the Trinidad scorpion pepper, which is the 2nd hottest pepper in the world right now. I just like the heat. Is anybody familiar with how they rate or grade peppers? Scoville.
If it's too hot for you, it doesn't do any good to drink Pepsi or water.
Milk is the only way to actually quench it, and the only reason milk works is because there's an enzyme in milk that actually breaks down the oil and capsaicin. Now, the Scoville rating is how they rate hot peppers. And the way the Scoville system started was a gentleman by the name of Scoville got a whole bunch of his buddies around and said, hey guys, we're all going to eat these hot peppers and we're going to see how bad it hurts. And then the way his system worked was he took a squirt bottle and he said, I'm going to squirt you in the mouth one time, and every time I squirt you in the mouth is going to represent 1,000 Scoville. So if you ate a jalapeno and he had to put 10 squirts of water in your mouth to cool the burn down, that's how they rated peppers. all the way up until recently. Now it's all done by computer and electronics and things like that, so it's much more scientific. But they were able to establish a difference between 1,000 different varieties of peppers in that same manner. Jalapenos, like we're using today, are rated between 8 and 10,000 Scoville. And everybody says, wow, that sounds like a whole lot. Habaneros, which we carry downstairs, they're those little tiny orange peppers, are similar to Scotch bonnets, and they're rated at 300,000 Scoville. Okay? That's not even in the top 20 when it comes to hot peppers. There is a new pepper that's been around for about 5 years. It's called a ghost chili or a bucho loco. The bucho loco chili is 1,040,000 Scoville. It's not the hottest either. It's because it tastes good. There is another pepper called a Trinidad scorpion pepper that is 1.2 million Scoville. And then they have one hotter than that that is a Trinidad, this one I can't pronounce necessarily, Mordave, which is 1.4 million Scoville. Okay? It gets pretty warm, I promise you. Now, we do carry ghost chilies in the store, but we don't carry anything above ghost chilies. And for anybody who considers trying them, I will warn you against it. There is a salsa that we carry, and I figure it's in a grocery store, it says ghost chili salsa, how hot can it really be? I promise you, it is incredibly hot. I can taste it. Can everybody see that? It kind of got melted and it got all gooey and goopy. That's what we're looking for. Now, for this one, avocado, tomatoes, jalapenos, onions, crab meat. Now with our crab meat, I kind of roughly chopped it up, but I didn't really chop it neatly and uniformly. The reason for that is I like different sizes, and two, once we start to mix this, it's going to kind of break apart a little bit anyway. Limes. Everybody knows with limes, if you beat them up a little bit first, it makes it a whole lot easier to get the juice out of them. By beating it up, I mean you can bounce it off the counter, you can throw it off the wall, give it to the kids 2 hours before you need it, tell them to bounce it around a few times, or you can put it on the counter and with the heel of your hand, just rub it right into the counter. Now, you have to be careful because many times I've done this and I pushed too hard and I've squished the lime all over the counter. Okay? So you want to do it to where you're actually softening it and you're trying to get the skin to kind of soften a little bit and break it down. Since I have two, I'll show you. This is about what you want it to try and feel like once you get it ready to juice. Now everybody knows what a fresh lime feels like, right? It's kind of firm, it's got that rough skin on it. Just a little bit of work to that and it made it to where you can actually get a lot more juice out of it. By breaking the cells down inside a little bit and getting it soft first, when you go to cut it and you actually try and work with it, it makes it a whole lot easier. Now with this, we're just going to squeeze it right in here. Lime and avocado go very well together. The avocado is a creamy, and it's almost like a fat. The lime helps cut that down. This next thing we're going to use is cilantro. Just like avocado is a staple in California, cilantro is a staple in most Mexican cuisines. You want to pick through it, make sure you don't have anything bad on it. And then just like any other herb, you really want to try and strip your stems down just a little bit. You don't have to get every stem out. This is a very, very, very soft stem. You could chew on this and chew it apart very quickly, very easily. It's not like rosemary or thyme where they're very woody stems. This is more like parsley. We'll get that stripped down. And again with this, we're going to chop it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be minced. With basil, it's very easy to roll it all up and slice it real fine. Yeah, I told you. And it didn't take very long. With this, we're just going to kind of roughly chop it up. Basically, what we're trying to do with any herb, what you're trying to do is you're trying to break the skin of the shell of the plant and release the oils from the inside. So just to rough chop this up, and we're just going to sprinkle it in there with it. I'll move this over so I can work with it. Now, the last thing we're going to do, tiny bit of hot sauce. Trust me, that's a little bit. A little bit of pepper. I use more than that in my eggs in the morning. And we're going to add a little bit of salt. Now, everybody knows I don't use a whole lot of salt when I cook. However, with this I'm going to, because you're going to try and get the flavor of the tomatoes and the flavors of the avocado to come out a little bit. Tomatoes, especially this time of year, tend to be really watery. If you add just a little bit of salt to them, it takes more tomato flavor and less water to them. Okay? Now with this, you want to very, very gently mix this together, because we're trying to keep most of the lumps and the chunks in the same size that they actually are. We worked really hard to get that avocado out of the shells in one big piece. We really don't want to turn it into mush. Now, I am going to take this out of this big bowl, and I have this other little one next to me. We're just going to gently scoop it from one to the other. We're going to try and keep as much of it to the center as we can, because we're moving it to a clean bowl so we don't have fingerprints and food all stuck to the outside. And by the time we're done these classes, I'm sure that everybody in here is going to own a box of these gloves, just so you can be like me. Now, we got all that down. The last thing I want to do with it is go back to my cilantro and find a pretty couple tops. Make sure there's nothing bad on it. And whenever I use fresh herbs, I like to advertise the fact that I'm putting them in there. Some people don't like them, some people can't eat them. If you have something that's as strong a flavor and such as an intense flavor as cilantro is, which it doesn't take a whole lot to make it noticed, kind of spread it out a little bit, show people that it's on there and let them know it's there.